Welcome to the debate about the United Nations, 75 years. Tomorrow, at the 21st of September, is the day to celebrate this 75 years of United Nations, and it's an amazing success story, no doubt. Yeah, imagine under what kind of conditions the United States, the United Nations was created in the United States. Sorry for that. In the year 44, 45. The World War II still fought in Europe, in Japan, in Asia. It was really very dramatic. And then the wisdom of the American leadership to already prepare the San Francisco conference, prepare all the first meetings under very difficult conditions with the alliance with the Soviet Union and the war still going on. And this leadership, this wisdom, this foresightedness to do that and to really create a better world from this terror of the World War II and the Nazis and all these disasters. It was really a big wisdom. Obviously, it was the result of the failure of the United States to join the League of Nations after the First World War and all this ongoing debate about global governance, how to really move ahead with and regulate global affairs better, ensure peace and prosperity for everybody. This and human rights. This was, of course, the core of this ongoing effort. And, of course, the first years were very difficult with the Cold War raging until Victory Day in the year 1990. But, okay, it also had a lot of improvement and a lot of contributions wherever the UN could. Obviously, in the confrontation between the superpowers in the Cold War, it was not entirely successful. Obviously, in the last 30 years, it had a lot of success and a lot of major contributions in Bosnia, in Kosovo, but also in many African and Asian crisis points. And in generally, it's without alternative. The UN is very important. And I really want to say congratulations to everybody involved and to the whole world. It's really a wonderful day to celebrate. But also, like in many things, all human organizations have to be reformed and to be adopted because there are some issues in the United Nations. It was, of course, created with five big powers. That was the idea. Soviet Union as an ally in World War II has proven to be an enemy actually in the Cold War, and now then Russia has inherited the seat with the veto power from the Soviet Union. A very questionable decision because why exactly, for example, the Ukrainian or the Kazakhs have not contributed to victory in World War II, and they have no veto power. And you see how Russia is treating now Ukraine since 2014. Whenever Ukraine was neutral and was secured by the Budapest memorandum, and then the situation is that then it was attacked, and Russia is still in the Security Council. It's without any understanding. So actually, under normal circumstances, a state which attacks any other should be basically the membership in the UN should be frozen. And actually, I call that the membership of Russia should be frozen under normal circumstances. I think that's very important. Yeah? Because until they leave all this wars they have started from Ukraine, Syria, Libya, Georgia, that's completely unacceptable for a rule giver, for a rule enforcer to be the rule breaker. I think it's really very wrong. And then China, I want to remind that in the year 45, there was a free Chinese government. It was still civil war, obviously. But then 49, the communists won, tragically with the help of the Soviet Union. And then the communists have inherited this seat in the United Nations. And now they are like world power, dominating global affairs in the UN. I don't see exactly why the communist China should have such a role in world affairs. Yeah? That is very questionable, and we have to really either have more cooperation from them or also think that we reform the global organization, that no communist government via the UN has so strong influence on important issues for global peace and prosperity. So, in the general aspect of my previous presentations, maybe you followed some, I'm for global good governance in four parallel sectors: the UN, the OECD, regional integrations, and better states. I will explain all these 4 pillars, and this one now is about OECD and about UN, and also about regional integration, better states. I mean, these 15 problematic states, I will do a separate video, but this one is now about UN, OECD, and regional integration, meaning what kind of global governance we should have and how to improve it for the next phase of globalization 2.0, which we have now the next 30 years. The video about globalization maybe you have seen already, where I discussed about this very big success of the last 30 years. So in generally, we should reform our institutions. They are working good. They are really very, very good, and the institutions of the world work, but we should adopt them, and it's necessary to adopt them and to transform the OECD in a union of market democracies, enlarge them, reform the mechanisms how the UN works and how decisions in the Security Council especially are made. And then we should foster, as EU, especially as Europeans, a similar regional integration project like we have it in Europe, very successful post-war. We should also try to promote this with the Americans and with the Africans and with the ASEAN and with others. I will go into great details on that one. And then I will also then call, we have these 15 problematic states and we have to focus on them, because there's nothing wrong with the UN in principle, or nothing wrong with globalization or with the market democracy. It's these 15 very problematic, either hostile, communist or fragile states which are really causing the problems. So yes, UN, this is my clear commitment to the UN, absolutely. I have talked a bit about the history as well. But the question is how really make this decision making in the UN Security Council, because that's really the core of the decision making. And we have to see that the French seat is to be transferred to the European Union, and that we also have to see that the UK seat should be with the Commonwealth of Nations, and then also to see that Japan and South Korea to be compounded in the ASEAN, and also to have a seat for the Organization of Islamic States. And then we have these regional organizations better represented. And Kosovo and Palestine should be obviously included in the UN as well fully. I'm talking about funding. I generally have already discussed the various levels of international funding, but a mature Western state and other countries of that kind of prosperity level should have 5% for global governance, including, of course, the military. So 2% of GDP for defense, and then 2% for regional economic integration like the EU, and 1% for global governance. Yeah? This is very, very important. Yeah? There can be some variations in that aspect. I have made some of these statements here. But in general, we need stronger global, but also stronger regional governance. And this costs something, and we have to be ready to pay for that. So, is the UN providing good global governance? Yes, absolutely, but we need to a little bit regionally diversify. We have not so strong presence in Asia. We have Nairobi as a regional center, Vienna and Geneva, and also New York. There's several other places where the UN is sitting, but we should be more in the southern hemisphere and more in Asia as well. I think it's important to reflect the dynamics of demographics and political power, and also be more inclusive, and also to discuss with our partners from Asia and to take more responsibility for global governance, but also sharing the costs. So we have I have made a system of funding. What should be the budget? We have not enough money in the UN system. This is 68 trillion globally. That's the GDP today. And we should think about having 0.2 of global GDP. That should be given to the UN overall. 0.1 as a membership fee from each state member, and also each regional member should give 0.1. That means the EU paying an extra 0.1 as one of the 10 regional members. So it would be overall, I think, a 170 billion budget for the UN system, and that's about 3 times from today. And that's, I think, also important to have a decent funding. We have these tasks for the UN, these problematic states and crisis states, migration, global food safety. There's many, many tasks for the UN and its sub-organizations, and the whole this system must be adequately funded, otherwise it cannot work. So the 10 permanent members, I'm not in favor of keeping this 15 system with the 10 rotating and the 5 permanent, but 10 permanent members, and that should be basically 5 for union states, and I call it state unions. You will understand in 1 second how I explain it. 1, of course, for the European Union, 1 for China, stricter compliance with the rules, please, and Russia, obviously frozen for its breaking all the rules. India, the Commonwealth, and that should be basically the UK seat giving to the Commonwealth. And then it's the ASEAN 14, including Japan, South Korea, the African Union, the Organization of American States, the Organization of Islamic States, and all states are member in the UN and also in one of the 10 regional systems. Yeah. And maybe also some of the unions, like the EU, will be more like the United States, which I'm obviously in favor, but that's basically the idea. And if you see and analyze these very big states like United States, India, China, and Russia, also regionally at least, also from the geographic dimension, this is basically, and India, and these are basically state unions. So that's the logic. Now let me also call, it's also my special interest, but the Republic of Kosovo to be member of the UN. It's of course very important, and it should be. 100 states have already recognized the Republic of Kosovo, but it's also a very good symbol when you see why the UN is not working, because when Russia and China don't want it for specific reasons of their support and alliance and whatever the internal fragilities of Chechnya and the Uyghurs, and they're afraid that other countries could break away from them as well, but also because they have this kind of anti-Western alliance with the Serbs, then we don't accept a country which we have as West already recognized. And that's, I think, something like symbolic for the UN. When we don't do that, then we are really not very serious UN system. And I call on the UN to include the Republic of Kosovo. So let me make it clear. I have it clear with the persons already how we can have the 10 permanent members. I here see the UK. I have put also Boris Johnson. Maybe we should have maybe the Queen for that, because I'm talking here about the UK seat being transferred to the Commonwealth. I have here in the Russian Federation, the Chinese Republic, India, and I hope for the victory of Joe Biden. And that would be the first level, and the same level. All should have the same kind of status. All should have a veto. And then it's the Islamic International Organization, OIC, the European Union, the African Union, ASEAN, and also the OAS. So that's 5 regional organizations. And then you see as well the Commonwealth and the UK, Russia, China, India, and the United States. And all of those, because they will be covering basically the whole world, and then they have the internal mechanisms in the Commonwealth and in the various institutions from ASEAN to really come to common decisions. And you see there's no France in that sense. Of course, that's problematic for them, I understand it, but Mr. Michel is representing all of the European Union. So I call basically any way to compete with the UN also in these regional political integration systems. Yeah? And this is a very much important aspect also for Europe to be a stronger European Union of 37 countries, but also for having partnership with the African Union. That's already very well. With the OAS, with ASEAN, there we have 2 major tasks ahead. and also to help the Commonwealth to develop in that direction with Australia and other countries, and really try to have these 10 regional development, regional integration systems working better. It's not exactly 10, to be clear, because India and China, Russia and the US are already state unions. So it's 6 regional integration systems, and the EU to foster relation with all the 5 others. So why? Some things are really global issues. Some things can be handled regionally much better. That's really very important, that we have an additional level of political economic integration, where also issues of, for example, the South Americans probably handle things in Venezuela better than now the global level. And this is one example, but also Congo or other crises, the African Union can do much more competently, of course, with support, but I think that would be much more logical. I have here summed up the political integration systems. A more federal European Union for 37. Of course, one place always for our British friends, but my focus here, 6 new countries from the Balkans, Ukraine, Georgia, Moldova, more funding for the EU level, and also more openness, more transparency. I have also called more trade systems. I have said the permanent seat in Strasbourg of the European Parliament, a 3rd seat of the EU for the Council of Europe and the European Judiciary in Gdansk, the OECD moving back to Brussels from Paris, not back because it was always in Paris, but the OECD very much connected towards the European Union in a kind of a EU-OECD global partnership as a union for democracies, and then the OSCE to move to Istanbul from Vienna and to enlarge also our Eastern Partnership, basically to have a much stronger European Union, to be really a role model for the other continents, and this European Union also to get the seat in the United Nations Security Council and to be a role model for all the other, and now I think correct, 5 regional integration systems. Yes, I'm also in favor of reforming the United States of America. It's time for several reforms as well there. It's of course the most successful country in the world. It's of course the most successful state union in the world, but it has many internal welfare issues, which now with higher density of population and with in the 21st century, some things have to be reformed, and we have also to do a mutual learning between the European Union and the US. We are like very closely related in many aspects and very strong allies in NATO, but we have also to learn from each other and discuss certain things, how a more federal United States of America with basically a more European America will be also very beneficial for the Americans, for the citizens of the United States, and I'm totally in favor of that. That's the 3rd system. Also, India is, of course, still lagging behind economically at 3 trillion, when you see China with 14 trillion, about the same population, and India obviously also being more open, possibly a part of the West also could be in the OECD, a free trade agreement, and also connect infrastructure-wise better with this whole, when we can even connect with China infrastructure-wise. India obviously half the way only, and we can really think also about a closer partnership between the EU and India, and obviously a free trade agreement. So what is the future of Russia? Russia would be the 4th system in that way, the free federal Russia. Obviously that must be our aim. We should really work with the Russian opposition and civil society. There will be an end of Putin one day. We should freeze the Russian participation in global governance for now, because it's an aggressive power in Ukraine and Syria, Libya and elsewhere. But we should also work systematically, because the Russians are obviously also very good people, interested in freedom and democracy and rule of law and human rights. And they are a member already of the Council of Europe. And we should really help them to see a better future. 28 member states of a free federal Russia, that maybe will not be the case in 2030, maybe not in 2040, but we should really try to have a real working federal Russia as the aim. Also, that must be our aim for China, a free federal China in the future, one which is really a full partner, a market democracy, a free country with rights for the regions and with a kind of a similar regional integration system like the Europeans have it, probably, or the United States, it will probably be more a state union, but really to transform. And also then maybe there is a time when there can be also integration with Taiwan. Why not? It's not off the agenda for a free federal China to be united again. But if the Chinese now continue to mistreat the people in Hong Kong, we probably have to really give a stricter course towards China in the coming years. If China thinks that just because they are relatively rich now, about the same level like the EU 27 is now the economic output, 14 trillion, then they have reached that level. Yeah, congratulations, it's fantastic, it's really good. But you also 3 times the people. Huh? So the prosperity per capita is by far not the case. And we are not going to have a Chinese world. It's not going to happen. You know, you are very welcome to join the Western world, the Western world order. And it's not that we want to occupy it or whatever, but we want to make sure that this is freedom. If you want to be part of the free world, you are very welcome. But we will not going to be part of communist China. That's certainly not going to happen. And there is also the Organization of American States. Yeah. That is a little bit weaker because they have this powerful USA in the north, but I think it's a very important organization. It has a really long and strong organization. It has institutions similar to the EU, and we should probably make a much stronger partnership between the EU and the OAS in the coming future. So the ASEAN 14, it's now 10, you know, there's time for it to enlarge, and also South Korea and Japan should be member. I understand that's all, you know, connected to the Second World War, to colonialism and past problems, but do you really think that we in Europe have less problems, or we have more easy integration of Germany into the EU like Japan? I think it, you know, can be quite compared. And it's really very good to talk to the Japanese and South Koreans. It's much better to be united, to be together, and to have a similar situation and a stronger integration agenda with ASEAN. Obviously, we can have these ideas better promoted once we have a free trade agreement with ASEAN, which probably, hopefully, we will soon have. Here comes, of course, the big progress of the last decade, the integration of African Union, and also to be similar to the EU, and that's really ongoing. You know, it's quite a big success. We can be very proud about it, and I'm actually very proud that our Commission President makes it such a big priority, and he has really huge potential ahead. The African Commission is sitting, African Union, and the Commission of the African Union is sitting in Addis Ababa. There is also a lot of other possibilities. We have several economic integration areas like ECOWAS and for the West, COMESA for the East, yeah, and SADC for the South, the Central Europeans, and you know the Arab Maghreb Union. You know, this is all like we have it also in Europe with EFTA, CEFTA, and EU. It's all good, but you know, a little bit more integration, a vision for African internal market. Come and see what we have achieved in Europe. And that's really the way ahead. Think about the common currency. There is already this ECO, this CFA franc, which is back to the euro. That's really very good. And that's stability and the firm fundament for prosperity. So there's great potential. The most complicated of all partners, obviously, for the Europeans, but also internally, is the OSCE. And, you know, but also when it's complicated, it means it's important. And this is, of course, a lot of the complicated areas of the world, yeah? Like where there's civil war and disaster, Syria, Libya, and Iran, a hostile nation, is, of course, these members of the OSCE. Yeah? And, you know, to support that organization and to build it up, to strengthen it, is a wonderful, wonderful potential for improvement of all these conflict situations and for the fight against the against poverty. And I really think we can do a lot if there's a EU OSCE partnership to help them to build a more integrated political system, and that's something we should really work, because there's so many different, the Arab Union, there's a lot of competition as well institutional, but we should pick and choose this one and really work successfully to strengthen it as the political integration system of the Islam world. So the Commonwealth, now this is of course, it was less strong in the past, but now the UK has left the EU, and then it's a question also about the role of the United Kingdom. No question, very important historically and also in the future state in the world, even when it doesn't have so much population, but it has a strong institutional role to play. And the question is, will it be able to bring the Commonwealth together, to unite in a form of political integration system, and also to transfer the seat in the UN Security Council from the UK to the Commonwealth Secretariat? Of course, that's a big question. Of course, it gives also then the situation that some countries are double represented, like India, obviously, and also Africa, South Africa would be in the Commonwealth, but also in the African Union. But I think that can be managed. That's not a fundamental problem. But the question is if the UK really wants to sail away alone or wants to be in a political integration system, which I very much recommend. So I have made now the EU global policy for post-corona. Really, what can we do? We have to really work on this. This is a good strategy, reforming the UN, containing Putin's Russia, and invite Ukraine to join the EU. That's really very much core of this strategy. And also have stricter rule enforcement towards China. Of course, we can have an investment protection agreement, but it must be that they comply to the global rules they want to be part of. It's not that we have forced them to join the WTO. They wanted to be part of it, be a responsible member of it. And the same for the WHO and for the other organizations which there are. And also when it comes to this whole discussion about investment protection, it's all good, but please, we are not joining China, we are not joining Russia. They join the Western world, the global institutional framework. If you don't like the term Western, fine, but it's basically a rule-based world, and not a force or might is the right world. And when it comes to OPEC, obviously, you might know, I think that are three very useless organizations, OPEC, BRICS, the Eurasian Economic Union. Nobody really needs them. So leave all that behind and offer everybody who leaves these organizations membership in OECD, move OECD to Brussels, and transform it in the global union of market and democracies. And obviously, the French to cede the UN Security Council seat to the European Union, and it should be Mr. Michel sitting also be representing the EU on such issues together with Mr. Borrell. So UN reform definitely very important, and then also to build a stronger alliance with the United States to reform this global governance system. And and also free trade agreements. I made a presentation already on that one. So coming to OECD. And that's a parallel organization to some extent to the UN, but it should be also competing with the UN, but it has to be much stronger. It should be transformed, and basically it is already, as a union of market democracies. So all the market democracies, that from America, Asia, and Africa, who fulfill certain standards. It's not the union of industrialized states. Well, I didn't like that term, and it doesn't mean that you have to be only the rich can be there. No, the question is: are you a market economy? Are you a democracy? Then you can join. And when you are not rich at the moment, we help you to get rich by these two instruments of democracy and the market. And then, there's certain regulatory frameworks which nobody has to repeat because they're already there. And then make sure that the American countries, all the countries who have free trade agreements, join the OECD and make that big. And give it a little bit of competition to the UN, because we can also put the one or the other agency, which is maybe complicated with our friends from Russia and China, put it to the OECD. Improve the global regulatory framework, and democracy works, market economy works, and make sure that everybody understands that. So, OECD, Global Union of Market Economies. That must be an important tool. It has a little bit of a sleepy character, only about the economic comparisons and so, and also for some, having some ideas like reducing tax competition, and all these global left-wing guys have somehow a retirement there. That is wrong. Yeah? That's the global union of market economies. Yeah, it's not your task to introduce high taxation in Morocco or something like this, or only fight climate change. No, make sure that Indonesia, Nigeria, Argentina are members, and help them to increase the regulatory framework. But on all issues, not just on the climate or on whatever high progressive taxation. Make sure that we have 72 members or 160 members in this decade. This is very good. Fight all socialism and authoritarian states, and they should not be member. But everybody who is basically ready to leave OPEC and who is ready to leave the BRICS, get them in fast, and help them. Make your own budget for improvement of regulatory standards from Brazil to Nigeria. This is very good, and EU should really heavily invest in the OECD. A parliamentary network is good. It's already there. That's fine, but we need we have parliamentarian assemblies towards the OECD, towards NATO parliamentarian assembly. We need the OECD parliamentarian assembly because that's the union of the market economies. Yeah? Obviously, market economies have to have really very good parliamentarian systems. So make sure that this is a kind of global parliament to some extent, the OECD Parliament Assembly of all market economies. And the OECD is already organizing the G20, an organizational form I don't like very much, because then you have very problematic states already there without asking them for anything positive, like Russia. Remember the Argentina summit, the high five with the Prince of Saudi Arabia? I mean, what is Russia doing at that? We don't need Russia at the G20 as well. We need Russia certainly also not in the G7. So let's basically make the G7 the steering body of the OECD, not to just ignore the OECD on the G7, but the OECD Secretary General should be at the G7 summit. Yeah, that's very important, and to make sure that the G7 really works very well and must be reformed as well. So I have here the list of the biggest 18 economies, and you see Russia is number 11. So far from any G7, to be very clear, and to make sure that Russia is certainly not on any kind of invitation list here. And then the future of G7, yes to reform, but who should be? South Korea, Australia, Mexico. These are market economies, and they should be our partners. They should be at the G8 summits, and they have to be invited together with the Japanese, obviously, and also with the UK and the EU. And this makes a lot of sense. Mexico is a strong partner and should be much closer to the West, also Australia and also South Korea. So, the EU is a little bit overrepresented here. We have these EU personalities. We have a Commission President and a Council President. That's enough. Yeah? At the last summit, I have here made a photo, and you see then the German Chancellor, the EU President, the UK, obviously it's a different case. Then you have the French President, then you have the Italian President and the Commission President, This is the wrong format. We don't need a kind of European jamboree. Then everybody says, are you not able to act? We pay and we have two persons to represent Europe. That's basically the Council President and the Commission President, and that's it. So that's what we need on the G7 level, and the G7 or G8. Don't forget, we need to attach that as a kind of steering body of the Union of Market Democracies. So it has to be representative. So how that is going? It's basically these are the people who should sit at the G8 in the year 2021. Beyond the personalities, I have put them all on the slides. I don't know if Joe Biden will be elected. I hope for it in this year. But then you have the Canadian Prime Minister, so two North Americans. You have the UK Prime Minister, Mexico, of course, the president. And so that would make a lot of sense from the side of the UK and North America. And then you have the Australian, the South Korean, the Japanese, and the new prime minister, and 2 European personalities is enough. And then you have the Secretary General of the OECD as the Union of the Market Economies. And if you want, you invite also, the head of the IMF or the head of the World Bank. There can be other personalities around, but in principle, that's the framework to do. The US and Canada, North America and Mexico, and then you have the 3 Asian powers, if you wanted, Australia and South Korea and Japan, and you have the UK and the EU, and that's basically the steering body of the Union of Market Economies. And then the G8, in that sense, is already in a kind of institutional framework that makes a lot of sense, and I think it is very logical. Coming to the WTO, obviously, that's a very important organization, and we need also to have more members for the WTO, because I cannot understand why almost since 5 years we have no new members in the WTO, and the WTO has issued now a list of countries which might join, and it's a very controversial list. Kosovo is not included, obviously, that's really very bad, but Libya, South Sudan, Syria, Iran, Belarus, that's really, Belarus, I'm not against Belarus, but not during the time when they have this kind of election crisis. Yeah? Free Belarus, yes. And Iran is a hostile country. Syria is a broken country, totally at war, and a very dangerous place. South Sudan, maybe, I don't want to exclude it completely. Maybe this is Libya, then Kosovo not. This is very deeply problematic. We have to have a list of 11 countries which really should join. I've made the case very much for Kosovo, Serbia, Bosnia, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, and also in the future Belarus after Lukashenko. And also then Lebanon and Algeria. That's very good. And also some other smaller countries. And Iraq and Ethiopia. That's really very important. Let's focus on the enlargement, but make a serious list which can be really accepted and to be very reasonable and to be fast. Yeah, I made it here: Serbia, Bosnia, Kosovo, Algeria, Lebanon, Uzbekistan, Azerbaijan, Ethiopia, Iraq, Turkmenistan. That's the top 10, and Belarus we might see. And some of the smaller ones, I'm totally in favor. Just make sure we enlarge. WTO is really a game changer. Look how good it works. China joined in 2001. Now 2019, from 1 trillion, 1.3 trillion to 14.3 trillion. I mean, that's amazing. That's really amazing. So the WTO is really working. Why we don't have it faster enlarged is a mystery for me. Anyhow, coming to the conclusion, the UN and the UN system is really working very well. We can be very proud about it. It's a very good organization. And we can really be very happy that we have it, and forever to have it. It's really fantastic. Just, we have to really assess the issue with the Russian aggression. We have also the Chinese compliance to the rules, and that's 2 central issues which we have to address. And also we have to make it more inclusive in terms of including all regions of the world. That's my plea, my proposal. And I hope there will be some movement in that direction. And global good governance is really what we need much more, better funded, and more to really ensure democracy, market economy succeed, human rights, very, very important. And with these working institutions, then we also have the possibility to manage globalization for another successful 30 years and maybe add another 65 trillion to global output in the next 30 years. Wouldn't it be amazing? And also to focus on the real issues. We have 13 countries in the 15 countries which are really very problematic, either failed states or rogue states or some really problematic revanchist powers, and we have to address them, and for them we need better working global institutions. So happy anniversary for the UN. And let's see for the next 30 years, for the second phase of globalization, even better working UN. And let's reform it together to be ready for the challenges ahead. Thanks a lot.